You can't always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. You can't always get what you want. But if you try sometimes, you'll find you get what you need. You get what you need.
All right, the day has arrived. We're actually going into AutoMode 1 day early due to the school struggling massively to keep him in range. We had to pick him up yesterday. He was 357 with 1.5 ketones. Today they had him over 400 with how many ketones, Derek?
1.1.
1.1. So this is the Hail Mary pass for having blood glucose numbers in line so that he can learn in school. The 670G is the only option that we have until Bigfoot Biomedical and Beta Bionics and Insulet Corp and Tandem come to market, but he could be in 7th or 8th grade by then. He's currently in 5th grade. So Derek, why don't you tell us what you think about the 670G?
Well, the 670G is pretty awesome. And I think I kind of like it.
What do you think is so awesome about it?
Well, it's so awesome because today we get to go in auto mode.
So, do you remember Loop, your pizza pump?
Yeah.
After we went off of Loop and went on to the Medtronic, we've had to do old school diabetes care. So, what has that been like for you?
Well, it's been pretty good.
It's not a closed loop. It's been okay. Once we started mimicking how Loop controls blood glucose, we did much better than when we were doing basic pump old school because of his gastroparesis. So, Colleen, what is your assessment of the 670G?
I like the Guardian, the CGM. It really did a great job of keeping up with his high blood sugar today.
Today he, as we had mentioned, was over 400, and we went into question marks on the Dexcom, and the Guardian tracked him through that entire process, whereas the algorithm wasn't able to handle what was happening with his blood glucose on the Dexcom. It was able to handle it on the Guardian. In range on relatively stable lines, there's virtually no difference between the Dexcom and the Guardian. We do find that the Guardian tracks his rising and falling better, but overall, they're both really great sensors.
Yes,
We were impressed though that the Guardian, its algorithm was able to handle his blood glucose, and we've had times where the Dexcom has been off, but when we were on Loop, on a closed loop, his numbers were much more stable, and so that's why we did not notice the variance when he was on Loop. When we went to manual diabetes care, where the swings were more pronounced, especially at meals, we saw that. Is any of this scientific? No, this is just how it works in our home with our care regimen. It's kind of like the MARD on a sensor. They're both relatively close, the Guardian 3 and the G5 and G4 505, but it's kind of like seeing a car that gets 35 miles per gallon at the dealer's showroom. How you drive that car is going to indicate whether or not you get 35 miles to the gallon. You may not even get that, but it's a comparative tool. So we use MARD to compare the different sensors. And overall, though, we used Dexcom for 9 solid years. Loved it. We started out with the Medtronic Harpoon, only lasted 90 days on it. And so we even closed loop with the Dexcom G4 505, which is the same algorithm as the G5, and found it to be wonderful. Closed loop environments are a completely different story. We had to start getting up at night again, which after a couple of nights of getting up, how did you feel, Colleen?
I realized I did not appreciate the amount of sleep I was getting on loop.
So Nate and Pete, it's hard to not take a closed loop for granted. That is true. That is true. I kept thinking to myself, I need to appreciate this more. So after a half month of being in manual mode, now the bizarre thing about where we are in diabetes technology right now is that the 670G in manual mode is basically the 640G where you have a predictive low suspend, as opposed to a low suspend once you hit a certain glucose number. It will be able to tell with the algorithm whether or not you're going to be low, and it will cut back on the basals. And that's a great feature. But to show you where we are in diabetes technology, Monday, 2 days ago, Tandem started their pivotal trial for that feature, predictive low suspend. So once they go through all those trials, once they submit it to the FDA, when that finally hits the market, it's going to be on par with the 640G that debuted in 2015. So, and no one, Insulet still does not have that. The FDA told us that they would rather have the entire solution go before them than the half, than the low suspend and then the high modulation of the basal. They would rather have it come in just at once because it's the same work. So by doing this in pieces, the companies are extending the time it takes us as customers to get those technologies, because it has to go through the entire process all over again from square one. So we need to be way further ahead. One of the areas where there is technology much further ahead is in OpenAPS and Loop. Loop now has carb enhancements for meals, and OpenAPS has AutoSense and AutoTune, and they're working on even more things, micro boluses. All of these things are wonderful technologies that are not going to appear for at least 2 years. We're not going to see any of that until Beta Bionics and Bigfoot Biomedical and the others release. There's a lot of companies doing things right. It's just the timetables are frustrating to us as PWDs and CWDs, is that it's just not happening fast enough. That was very evident when we saw the wonderfully innovative Generation 4 iLet debuted. People were very sad that they could not get that later this year. So with Medtronic rolling out 50,000 of these 670Gs by the end of November and then 100,000 by next summer, that is only going to be slowed down by the sensor availability, which they, in their fiscal year financial report, said that should not be a problem for much longer. They are prioritizing. Those with the pumps are getting a month's supply. They're not shipping 3 months supply so that it can go around. So as a collective community, we're all sharing. But that is slowing down the adoption for those not on the Pathway program. Anyways, was there anything else in regards to the Medtronic 670G? What do you think of the tubing, Derek?
Well, I think the tubing is pretty awesome because, like, when you, It's pretty awesome.
Now, when you were on the OmniPod, you didn't have any tubes.
No.
So how do you keep from getting tangled in the tubes now?
Well, I don't get tangled in the tubes, because there isn't much tubing.
Because you're wearing a waist pack.
Yeah, I'm wearing a waist pack.
Waist wrap?
Waist wrap.
Where do we get the waist wrap at, Mom?
Tally gear. It's a
Tally gear.
tummy tote.
Tummy tote. Without the tummy tote, if he was just putting it in his pocket or if he was putting it somewhere else, there would be more tube issues. When we first went from the OmniPod to the Loop, which was using the 722 Medtronic pump, we hated it. It was awful. And it was like 2 weeks we were just like, what have we done? Are we going to have to go back to the OmniPod? And then one day it was not an issue and it never has been again. And basically those first 2 weeks were just us getting used to doing the insertions and the tubes and not having bent cannulas or pinched tubing.
Yeah.
Or what?
The best place for the insertion.
The best place for the insertion. So there was a learning curve. 2 weeks doesn't sound like much time when you look at diabetes timeline, but when you're in it, it's not your most favorite event. There's so many issues in regards to T1D. It's such a broad spectrum, everything from those that don't have access to insulin to those that are on the bleeding edge, cutting edge, creating artificial pancreas systems. And there's need in all of those areas, and it's nice that we have community groups that address all of those areas. It would be nicer if the industry supported more of that work, as opposed to perhaps not supporting it or duplicating those efforts. And there are so many issues. At the end of the day, one can simply be exhausted just by what's going on in the industry, what's not going on in the industry, how the school is handling your child's T1D care. We are looking at the 670 as being a bridge, as we lost our wonderful school nurse from previous years. And the last 2 days have been high ketones and high blood glucose. So we're hoping that the school can't mess up the 670G and AutoMode. And I can base that on the sole fact that hope springs eternal.
Well, in all fairness, his insertion site wasn't locked in place today. For whatever reason that was. So it really wasn't her fault today.
Well, that's good to know. That makes me feel a little better. The hope is springing just a little bit more eternal right now. So anyways, we're going to cut to the Medtronic 670G pump, which is relatively small, but not as small as it could be. Such a wonderful design Beta Bionics has for a dual hormone being so small in the Gen 4. So anyways, we now turn to the AutoMode portion of the program. But before we do that, let's cut to where we've been so far on the 670G.
Join me. It is useless to resist.
What do you have there?
Here's the getting started guides.
Whoa, hand that to me. How thick is that?
It's a
Whoa.
Here's the Medtronic 670G.
Let's see. Okay. What else you have?
Here's the Guardian Link.
Ooh, that's the transmitter.
Yeah, it's a transmitter. I can't believe it. We got it in the same package.
Guardian 3.
And here's a little.
Oh, that's open. Is it? No, that's not open.
It's a mini med.
Let's see.
It's a mini med Medtronic. It's a little.
Is this a case?
I don't know. And we have.
It says attention return to goods. Is this?
It's
Hang on.
for.
Let's see.
It's a bag. And
Contour link.
here's the.
Paperwork. What else is in there?
Just. Nothing else.
Medtronic Air. Medtronic airbags?
Yeah, sealed airbags.
Woohoo!
Can you pop them? Or no? They're too loud.
They're too loud.
They're very
Are
loud.
they too loud for mom or too loud for dad?
Too loud for mom. Yeah, but we can. And you.
And me. Everybody say goodbye, CGM in the cloud.
Goodbye, CGM in the cloud.
What?
Can you give me a hug after?
Absolutely.
Thanks, Mom.
Okay. It's all right. It's okay. It's okay. You ready? You ready?
You are
sure?
so brave.
You sure?
Hey, that didn't hurt at all. Hey, that didn't hurt at all. Daddy,
Yep,
I love you.
I love you too.
Mom,
Hmm.
what's the... Mama, wait, don't do it. Not yet. Not yet, not yet, not yet, not yet. Okay,
Ready?
go. Hey, that didn't hurt.
No?
No.
Awesome.
That's
Good
not
job,
bleeding
Mom.
too. Woohoo!
Good job, Mom.
Progress.
Good job,
Okay.
Medtronic.
You gotta be careful. Did
Yeah,
you take
absolutely.
the tape off?
Hey, Derek. So, what do you think?
Well, I like this sensor.
You like the Guardian sensor?
Yeah. Even better than the old one.
Why?
Because,
I haven't seen you without one of those in 9 years. So, why do you like it better?
because it doesn't hurt, it doesn't have, it doesn't, it just
Move
feels
toward
better.
Move toward the mama.
I didn't.
It feels better?
It's tickling me, Mom.
She's tickling you?
Yeah.
I was technically supposed to put this on before I put the transmitter on.
All right, we'll say goodbye to everybody in CGM in the Cloud.
Bye, CGM in the cloud.
All right, as you can see, it's been pretty good. It's not been too bad. We haven't really hated life. Have we hated life on the 670G? Have you hated life on the 6? No?
No.
I must be the only one.
Why? Well, let's talk about that. What have been the things that she's gonna to do an ode to Luke right now. So tell us about that. Tell us about the difference between Loop and the 670G in manual mode.
Well, with the loop, you could sleep.
And she did get like 8 to 9 solid months of sleep.
Yes.
I actually got, my sleep patterns were so bad after 9 years of T1D care. that I only started getting sleep the very last month, and it was wonderful. And so it was kind of ironic that when we transferred that stopped. But, you know, it's, since there's only 350 people on the open source solutions, complaining about not getting enough sleep can sound very, very, very awful to everyone who has yet to close the loop, struggling night after night. I remember those fourth nights of no sleep where you would be up for the fifth time with a child, and you would just think to yourself, is this ever going to stop? Am I ever going to be able to get any sleep? And my wife and I would do tag team. Sometimes we do shifts. And so our hearts have always gone out to the single parents, the single caregivers dealing with this. And then those in the community with 2 children, or one of the parents of the children, 2, 3, 4, and even 5. I can't even begin to comprehend everything that you folks go through in regards to that. So this is going to sound like whining to so many people. So sorry about that part. So anyways, so that's the only thing you liked about Loop?
Yep.
It was, I didn't realize how good I was feeling and how much sleep I had been getting.
On Loop?
On Loop. But I was able to get solid sleep. And I didn't have to worry that when it suspended his basal, I didn't have to worry that he would eventually go high because it would compensate for having had it suspended. That's the one thing on the 670 in manual mode. When it suspends it for the low suspend, it doesn't compensate for the high that comes after.
Right. And it will actually probably suspend it longer than
Yes.
Loop would. In fact, it does.
It does.
Loop will automatically, within 5 minutes of coming into normal territory.
Yes, that's the one thing that has been a little bit interesting to me is one day he was triple arrows up and he was in range and he was still suspended.
Yeah.
Which wouldn't be
Because there's a set time frame for the suspend.
The maximum is 2 hours, but it's supposed to come back on once they're in range.
Right.
And if the momentum is triple arrows up and he's in range, you'd think it would know to turn it back on.
Well, and triple arrows up on
Is
the
the same
Medtronic.
as 2 arrows up.
No, actually 4 arrows up is the same. They actually have different. Dexcom will show you a slanted. You go from steady to slanted to 1 arrow up, and then you get 2 arrows up. With Medtronic, you get 1 arrow up, and then you get 2 arrows up, and then you get 3 arrows up. And I don't think we've ever seen 4 arrows up.
No.
But it does exist. We had somebody in the community tell us that it did exist. So for us, the double arrows up would probably be the 3. And then the 2 arrows up is probably the 1, and then the 1 arrow up is probably the slant.
Okay. But yes, I couldn't believe he was moving so rapidly up and still in.
But when you first see that, when you don't know that Medtronic does their arrows different, it like freaks you out when you see triple arrows up. You're like, because you're thinking about your 9 years of seeing double arrows up and what that means in Dexcom. So you're just like, ah!
Well, and another
all
thing,
hands on deck, all hands on deck.
Well, and another thing is the Dexcom has that horizontal line letting you know
Right.
stable.
Yeah, the stable diddle.
You don't have that on.
The absence of it is
The absence
the stable.
of it is the stable. So it took a little bit of getting used to, but nothing.
I think AutoMode's going to take us getting used to also because we can't see anything except with the world's only solution for monitoring. The 600 series from the Nightscout dev team, especially Leonard from Australia, he also mentioned to us that the predictive low suspend was a little longer than he would like. But with the Nightscout software, you will get the delta arrows just like you do with Dexcom. So that's nice. And being able to remote monitor that, being able to see your bolus and basal information remotely, not having to pull out
Yes.
the pump.
I would just like to say thank you for the devs for doing that.
Yeah, and from now until when we first found Nightscout, and our story came out yesterday with diabetesmine.com, that was the first time we had ever felt joys in the T1D. I think we had 6 years from infant, 12 months to 7 years old before we got that. And so that was our first, but when we closed the loop on the open source loop program, that was like tenfold. It was just amazing. He went from his worst A1C to his best A1C. And that was only being on the closed loop for 2/3 of the time during the weekday because he was at school in open mode. When we had him over the summer, 24 hours a day with us, and we were able to keep him closed 24 hours a day, we were blown away
Yes.
by what Loop could do. Blown away. He was having pizza and pasta days where his A1C was 5.2, 5.4, 5.7. I didn't even think those were possible. Not even nearly possible. And this for this wonderful guy who, 2 endocrinologists, one of them the head of a children's hospital with a PhD in T1D care and all kinds of other things, labeling him a brittle diabetic and saying that his A1C would never get below 9. Well, the solution for Loop, the solution for Open APS, came from community members that not only paid their own way through this or received very little funding that was available through the community, but they did it sleep deprived, they did it with day jobs, they did it with, and that's where we look at the medical industry and we say, take this over. Take this over. Let us retire before you retire. And with the cure always being 5 years away since the 50s, how many people have not only retired, but how many people working on this problem clock out at 5 p.m. and leave T1D on their desk and go home and live a life that none of us live and that we only, do you remember beforehand?
Remember what beforehand?
Life before T1D?
Barely.
I know I did not appreciate my sleep enough.
I know.
Did
We
not.
weren't getting any sleep. We had
Prior to T1D?
well, there was a short time we had sleep. We went from having a newborn and
Well, no,
a 6-month-old.
right, yeah, no, that, no. We haven't slept since the second generation of children, but we did sleep more before the diagnosis.
Right.
Yeah.
But with the first generation of children, we didn't appreciate the amount of sleep we had. It was kind of like,
It was.
what do you mean I didn't get 6 hours?
No.
I've got to have a full 8.
It's more like 10. I need 10 hours. I'm just kidding.
So, funny how life is. So we're about to enter the next new normal. And does anybody have anything else to say before we close the loop and go on auto?
Well, it's been a pretty good few weeks for the manual mode on 670, and I just love the 670 pump.
Okay. And that's the best we can hope for when there is no other option. So this is the 670G. He's 1 arrow down, so that would be a slant. That would be slow arrow down for Dexcom.
We learned this today. Is you press this button, and you get the CGM
graph.
screen. If you press up, you get the 3, 6, and 12 hour, 24 hour screen.
That's nice.
And if you press this way, you can get farther back. So,
And you can also get the reflection of the
and it tells
ceiling
you
fan.
what time it was and what the blood glucose was.
And the only downside to this is you only get to see this on the pump. You have to be with the person, or you have to have Nightscout remote monitoring where you get all of your familiar reports. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter what.
Yes. That
Doesn't
report
matter
isn't-
what pump you're using. Your reports are all the same that you've known and loved over
Yeah.
time.
Okay, so for auto mode, you press the center button.
And then
That's to unlock it. And you want to do this first. You come down to the status and you look for auto mode readiness, and you want all of those check marks checked off. All we have to do is put it into auto mode.
Okay, hang on.
Oops, sorry. Want me to go back?
Now you can go. Sorry about the ceiling fan and lights, people. Okay.
So now I need to go down to options, smart guard, auto mode, on. Auto mode, yeah, ta-da!
Change the save. Now is he going to go into auto mode not ready? Check
check
auto
auto
mode.
mode. Readiness screen for
details.
details.
Okay, so we go back to,
The screen.
it's probably because he's out of blood sugar range.
Let's see the status. Auto mode readiness.
BG required. Okay, so we gotta do a blood
Oh.
sugar check.
Okay, we're going
Now,
to come
this is
right
important.
back to that.
If I didn't think that the blood sugar was a good number, then I would want to press no. And he would go and then have him wash his hands and recheck. But because he was 150 on the CGM and we know he washed his finger, then I'm going to put yes.
And we don't want to do bolus. We
Are you
don't
going to
want
make us calibrate the sensor?
Well, I'm going to do that because I think that's why it asked us to
to do a blood check.
do blood sugar check.
And you have to wait for it to calibrate. Auto mode started.
Oh, so it's on. Auto mode is on and it's calibrating. Well, there's auto mode, people. 144,
In
blue
a.
shield,
All right.
1 active insulin.
1 unit of active insulin.
And so, Derek, what do you think, Mr. Man?
I like it.
You like it? One of the first do-it-yourself closed-loop systems, and now you're doing the very first commercial closed-loop system. Say pizza pump.
Pizza pump.
All right. I can't wait till it gets to be a pizza pump, huh?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
When does it get to be a pizza pump?
Okay, now Jason Gensler wants to have a picture of you. Can you hold that up higher to by your face? There you go. There you go. We'll zoom in on that. And perfect. All right. You can hold that up while we do the closing. So that's auto mode. Hopefully this will turn into a pizza pump. We'd like to thank the Nightscout Foundation for everything that they have done for the community, for everything that they have done in expanding their reach and support of the developers. There's so much more to do there. The foundation has been able to help many of the European developers and the local developers, but so many developers are still sleep deprived, paying for all of this time that they put in with their very own blood, sweat, and treasure. So we'd like to put in a plug for the donating to the Nightscout Foundation. You can get one of the new Nightscout Foundation Sport Tech shirts that are incredibly comfortable. It's made me wear t-shirts again. I wear it to travel. It's the most comfortable thing I've ever had to travel in. And your donation of $50 will allow us to further the scholarships, to further development help, and to continue to move forward while the boardrooms and the project teams and the industry infrastructure move forward also, but not at the speed that the worldwide developers and the We Are Not Waiting community can move forward. If you've ever been helped, if you've ever used a DIY solution that improved your life, and if you ever haven't, if you have never had the opportunity to donate, we would like to ask you to consider what is reasonable for you and in your life. One of the things, if T1D is an extremely expensive beast, if you're unable to donate, may we recommend that you pay it forward by sending us at the foundation a 1 to 5 minute video doing a talent or something that you have a great strength in. And we have suggestions and posts throughout the different groups where we explain that. We're going to be having a talent show night in mid-September where we put those all together and as one of our community building programs. And so that would also be a wonderful thing. And one of the things that you can do as a talent is just tell your success story. Tell your story about Loop. Tell about whatever happened. For us, it's the fact that Loop provided us the opportunity to have a 3 full point drop in A1C. One of the things that we appreciate is that the most educated and scholarly doctors were wrong about our son, that he is able to have an A1C in the 5s and 6s. These are things that no one would believe without seeing it firsthand, and we live it in our home. And so we want to thank the community, and as you can tell, this is coming from my heart and not my mind. And Derek, are you considering doing a talent for the talent show?
I don't think so. No.
I bet you he will.
You don't want to?
Wait.
What talent could you do? Music?
He's good at singing.
Well, I don't
He's
know.
good at knock-knock jokes,
What if we give you a guitar and an amp?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Let's
Let's do that.
yeah.
And in all honesty, I don't think we would be doing the 670G without Loop.
No, not at all.
Because we
Oh,
were
no.
not
No.
pro
Oh man.
Medtronic after our first experience.
No. We were harpooning this little infant.
Yeah.
Oh man, we only lasted 9 days on the 722 back in the beginning of our journey. And the funny thing about that is it's that very pump that allowed us to do Loop. So it's, even though there's community-wide concern and different levels of everything from concern to downright loathing to the full extent of Medtronic, every single thing that we're building on for the do-it-yourself is primarily Medtronic, although there are other pumps coming and being worked on. But it's one of those things where for our family, it came down to seeing the benefit of a closed loop through Loop. And we kept hearing Lane Desborough's clarion call of We Are Not Waiting. If we can improve our children's life, if we can keep the children safe, we will do that. We are not waiting. And for us, we had to overcome. And it probably took me 3 solid months of a lot of people in the do-it-yourself community telling me that the 670G was going to be a good thing for the masses. We're only 2% when we look at our entire community to just the North American type 1 diabetics. Those with type 1 diabetes. And we do not have the funding, we do not have the manpower to make a solution for millions, but we do have the solutions for one. And if 1,000,001 people do it, then that would work. But there's just so many people in need of an out-of-box solution that are, as one of the medical professionals in Belgium said, the value of the community is not only in what the community builds, but in the pressure that it can build to have industry move forward. And we're grateful for the FDA moving forward and bringing the 670G to the world 3 full years prior to when it would have come out. I mean, that's just amazing. What do we got going on?
Well, the battery is low, Mom. It's
No, but
yellow.
it's yellow, but it'll tell us when we need to change it.
And so we're grateful for that, and we're grateful for every opportunity that has been afforded us along this journey. So
It's kept him at 144 when before we went into AutoMode, he was 150 moving down. And since we have done AutoMode, he is still 144.
So that's like a 5-minute glimpse into it. We're 5 minutes into the 670G.
But
Everything is perfect.
But it would have continued moving down, is my point.
Yeah, it would have, and it would have moved down rapidly.
Yeah, because he has.
So that's it. He's cured. We're going to take the pump off him and head out to the Okra Bar.
With cinnamon.
Cinnamon lattes for everyone.
What?
You're not cured?
No.
What?
Look, I still have a pump.
Oh. Well, let's...
Sorry about that.
Well, this is the journey so far. We'll keep everyone posted in the community as we go along. We're definitely aware that it's not going to be all Christmas trees and rainbows, unicorns and rainbows. But if you ever come by a conference, you can come by. James will help you build a LED light throwy. And if you do it yourself, you can get the rainbow unicorn button. That might be the closest we can help you get to rainbows and unicorns. So this is our family to your family, and from us to you, signing off. Have a good day.
Bye.
This has been a Nightscout Foundation production. Come change the world with us. Learn more at nightscoutfoundation.org. We now return you to your regularly scheduled life, already in progress.